Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to point out that in any piece of legislation, there are going to be problems. There are going to be fraud. There's going to be fraud that needs to be investigated. But let's not lose the bigger picture here. Representative Smucker, my colleague who just spoke, saw Lancaster, a city in his district and his hometown, receive more than $36 million from the ARP to prevent layoffs, to boost the local economy. Dr. Burgess's district received more than $52 million in ARPA dollars. In fact, Ranking Member Smith, Missouri received nearly $1 billion. Now, all of you have gone and talked about the investments that you have made all over the country. In fact, it's amazing that Republicans all across America can't seem to stop promoting the benefits of the American Rescue Plan that they continue to oppose. In my home district in Lynn, Massachusetts, the largest city, they've been able to make a generational investment to improve the quality of the lives for residents through affordable housing, food security, entrepreneurship, small business assistance, workforce development, including childcare and digital access, mental and behavioral health, so critical in this pandemic, and environmental investments in infrastructure as well. Mayor Williams, could you just talk briefly about your city's experience with the pandemic and what would have been the impact to your city's local economy if not for the American Rescue Plan?
Thank you, sir. The economy in my city would have certainly continued to do as many communities have, and that is collapse. I do have to say the city of Union City was one of the highest in the metro Atlanta area as it relates to COVID. We had some of the highest case rates, and that's not something to be proud of. We are a municipality of less than 30,000 individuals, but we were always at the top when it came to COVID cases, but also making sure that our individuals in our community had access to health care. The biggest problem we had was getting people tested, getting people to physicians or hospitals that could treat them. So those have been some of the biggest challenges we had during the COVID, the early stages of COVID. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. And let me just say that just because many of my Republican colleagues are hypocritical here about this rescue plan and the investments that it's been able to make in their communities as well, it doesn't mean that they're all wrong. I will agree as a Democrat that the ARP has impacted the current inflation rate, but it's also important to understand the broader context globally, as well as the recession that we would have likely faced if not for this legislation. Inflation has been happening across the world, primarily from pandemic disruptions, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Even before the ARP passed, as Mark Goldwine on the Committee for Responsible Budget noted, the seeds for a high inflation environment were already planted, end quote. Right now, we're experiencing inflation with low unemployment and high growth. And if not for global issues such as the invasion of Ukraine, we wouldn't be seeing negative wage growth. Dr. Coronado, is the American Rescue Plan responsible for the 8.1% inflation rate in Europe?
Sorry, it's certainly worth, not the majority, not even close to the majority of the inflation we're seeing right now.
Okay, is the ARP responsible for the oil prices set on the international market, for the price of oil, which is set internationally?
No, clearly not, or the food prices.
Isn't it true that if the ARP wasn't enacted, we would likely have entered into a global economic recession with serious ramifications, or a recession for America with serious ramifications for the global economy?
We were still in a very precarious situation, yes. We had started to see positive economic growth in the US, but the global recovery was far more fragile and remains more fragile. And yes, without the fiscal support, especially in light of the repeated waves of COVID that were stressing communities and public health.
US growth is set to surpass China for the first time since 1976. Forecasts
Yes.
suggest U.S. GDP will grow by 2.8% this year, compared with just 2% in China. Dr. Coronado, did we see this during the Trump or even the Reagan administrations? U.S. growth higher than China?
No, we did not.
I see it. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.